Alright, welcome back to the DuckHill Workshop. My name is Ben, and today we're going to kick off part one of our flag display case build. So, as you can see, I've already got two here. I have the first attempt. This was my number one, and I screwed up some of the dimensions. So that, and then I also have these other pieces that I cut at the same time I was milling this, and I ended up just one short, well, not one short. This long bottom piece is not long enough to build a full-size case, so I'm going to turn both of those into cases for the smaller 3.5 by 5 flags. So these will both hold, what are they? Like the 6.5 by 9. I'll double check that. Basically the flag that you get at a funeral. So that's what they're for. One's going to be for the flag that we got when my grandpa passed away, and the other currently is going to be for the flag that my wife's family got when her grandpa passed away. So that's what these two are intended for. And then for the purpose of this video, I'm going to make a third one, maybe 4 or 5, I don't know. We'll just keep going, because once I get set up and get dialed in, I'm just going to crank out a few of these to get better and better. So far right away, because I've got two made for you. Oh, totally. I am totally forgetting something here right off the bat. So I introduced this shop shirt the other day, and it's kind of nice to be a shop shirt, but I think it's hilarious, and that's probably what it's going to become. But at the same time, I also bought another one. It's same cut, different print, so we're going to take a look at that right now. All right, so this is option number 2. They're both big, ridiculous prints. I love them. I think they're hilarious. And it's summer. Hydration. That's actually San Pellegrino's lemon juice. And it is like lemon juice. I'm sure it's really meant to be mixed with cocktails, but I really like it on its own. But that's because I'm such a tart. So, what I've learned so far. I haven't showed you, you're not going to see me glue up in this section because I glued up this one as a trial. And I spent all day yesterday editing train videos, because I went and saw the Union Pacific Big Boy 4014 steam engine come through Dundas and Northfield on Wednesday, the 17th, July 17th, which was awesome. Here's a photo, and here's a card to the video. If you haven't seen the video yet, totally take a pause, go watch like 8 minutes of train video awesomeness, and then come back. Because I think it's awesome. It's super cool. It's the largest steam engine, they made 25 of them, so one of the largest. Attractive force of 137,000 foot-pounds, 7,000 or 8,000 horsepower. We're gonna walk through the beginning stages of this, but what did I say? I learned some stuff. I'm not super thrilled with the way the plans call for these to be built, because the way they're laid out, there's no really good way to clamp these angles except with a band clamp. So when you use a band clamp, though, it applies decent pressure up here, but because these corners are 45'd and this is inside of this corner, when the band clamp wraps around this edge, it's not really applying pressure to the bottom of the frame. And so you don't get really good pressure on this joint. It just puts pressure on this corner and kind of pulls in, but not a lot. And so what weirdly happened is that this, so maybe my keys weren't perfect, but this one weirdly slipped in the bottom. So I'm gonna have to tweak it a little bit to get that figured out. Thankfully it puts a face frame on front and back, so we'll hide it a little bit, but the top, like even my top miter didn't perfectly seal up. So for the future ones, I'm either going to do two things. I'm either going to tape and super glue clamping blocks and then actually clamp each of the joints together. Down here in the inside joints, I think I'm actually going to make wedges that will stop the joint from sliding around. Like, you know that when it's butted up that it's perfect. The other thought that I've also had is to actually make like a clamping jig so that each of the pieces fit in and are held in place by the jig, and then the clamps are really just extra. So we're going to experiment with that. Like I said, we're going to make 2 smaller cases. We're going to work through the lumber here that we have to make larger, a couple more of these for you. So that being said, let's get to this. Basically what you're going to see here is the process of making these 2 cases and my case template. From there, like I said, what I don't have is glue up of these, so we'll talk about that in part 2. Yeah, I feel like I've probably been talking long enough. Let's actually make some stuff. And I'm gonna change. So. All right, so our first piece is cut to. I'm going to do it at 4, and it needs to be 3 3/8 when we're done. We're going to start at 4 and work our way down. Actually, I put my plugs back in. So out of this, we need 2 pieces that are 18 1/4 inches. So that puts us at 18 1/4. It's that, and what, 36 1/2-ish. So it's okay that I just ripped this whole thing at 4. All right, now we've cut our sides to length, or well, to width. They're still about 1 inch over length. Now we are going to trim the 45 around our ends. It is only going to 46.1 degrees, which means that our threads are junked up with sawdust. So let's open the cabinet up and take a look. And because I'm going to do this, I am also going to unplug the saw. Alright, you can see my current sticker collection. Uh-oh. Looks like I lost one though. Tree stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a holographic one too. It's cool. Alright, so this is probably going to be full of sawdust too. Oh yeah, yeah it is. Nice. Mm-hmm. Oh. This is what happens when you don't have dust collection set up. So we're going to take a little break and clean this up. All right, so I made some cutting errors, and this piece is not going to end up working out for what I needed to because I've already I made an error, I tried to fix it, and made it too short. So standard flag size is folded is like 16 3/4, and we are right on the money to 16. And as it currently sits, but if I sneak this in, it obviously won't fit a full-size flag. So I'm not going to abandon this completely. I'll make something. I'll probably make it into like a box, like a triangular box or something. I'm not sure. But right now we're going to turn around and make a template in pine before I make this again in walnut. So let's do that. So for rough dimensions, we need 2 at 19.5 and 1 at 26 inches. Alright, now we are going to rip them down to final size, which is 3 3/8. Yep, they fit. Okay, so now our short sides are cut. The next piece, we're going to cut 45s again, and it's going to sit inside of here. And the directions, the plans call for 25, call for 24 and 30 seconds. And I'm really getting this to be much more like 24 and 5/8, or not 5/8, 5/30 seconds. So that's kind of interesting. 24 1/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start this at like 24 1/2, and then slowly we're going to trim it down to fit. Alright, as you can see, we are just a touch too long. And now we are in perfect. So now each of these gets splined, so the next thing is to set up and figure out how to cut the 45-degree spline in here, and then this gets just a straight spline. So, and then the top and the sides as well. Okay, so here we've created an auxiliary fence, and I've made a little test piece, which is probably too short to be doing this safely. So when you make your stock, or in this case, when you make your template, make an extra piece that you can rip a 45 on that's the same thickness as your work, and then you can work on setting up your angle. And this just helps you. The sacrificial fence, which in this case I've got a piece of walnut, which seems silly, but it's not actually making contact with the blade. It's just getting closer to support your workpiece than you can with your actual rip fence. And this surface can be any material. But the one interesting thing about my saw in particular, I don't know about anybody else's, but in this position, with the blade this far withdrawn, it does not, it doesn't want, like there's not a lot of power. So it's kind of interesting. But I've got this set up to the right size, and now I'm going to cut in the grooves in my template. Alright, now you'll see that down here, this corner matches up, this corner matches up, and this corner all the way over here matches up. So now we just have to cut our splines to fit in there. It says to cut them out of hardboard, but I kind of think I've got enough. I've got enough walnut. I could probably run a couple of these and make them. I'd rather do them out of a... Okay guys, there you have it. We've gotten you... Son of a bitch. That's how you know it's filmed live. We have gotten you to this point. We have 2 cases. Okay, so here we are. The next steps, we're gonna make the face frames, and we're also gonna make the liner. And for those, the face frames are gonna be the offcuts, and from when we trim these down to size, and then the liners are gonna be the veneers actually that we trimmed when we cut these, when we resawed these on the table saw down to thickness. So they'll get mitered here in the corners, and they'll be just a hair smaller than, or narrower than the case itself, because remember, we've got to sandwich a piece of glass in there in the front and a piece of hardboard in the back. So that's what you're going to look forward to in part 2. We will be finishing this, we'll be putting the glass in, and we will be finishing them overall. So, other things that I've thought about as I've been making this is, one of my thoughts, I need to double check this still, one of my thoughts with my trouble on these miters is that my table saw might just be a hair out of alignment, because I cut these, as you saw, the miters with 45 the blade over, and used my miter gauge to guide the wood through the cut. So in theory, if my blade's set at 45, which I'm confident that it is, and if my miter gauge is set at 0 degrees, which I'm confident that it is, because I actually really like the way the Craig miter gauges pin them in place, in theory that should be making a perfect 45. Some things that could happen is I could have run out in the arbor on my table saw, so my blade is actually wobbling. I could also have my table saw, the tabletop, so the miter slot in the table saw and the blade are not in perfect parallel. What happened, because the arbor for the blade is bolted to the bottom of the table saw. And in the 3 years that I've owned this saw, it's possible, well, 4 years that I've owned this saw, it's possible that when we took it apart, when we moved it up here from Platteville, that something shifted in there after I originally lined it up. So I remember I had checked it when we moved it into this shop, but I haven't checked it since. So I'm gonna get my gauge out. I'm gonna show you, I'll do a quick, probably Wednesday's video is gonna be double checking the alignment on my saw. And the third thing could be that my miters are actually okay, but that my, the dados for the miter keys are actually a hair out of alignment, which would come down to my miter, or to my table saw fence being out of alignment. So we're gonna check all of those things, and you'll see that on Wednesday before we get into next week, part 2 of the cases next week. So stay tuned for that. Again, if you did not go check out the train video, you really should. But I'm also a total geek. That's where we're at today. Until next time.